We go through life and we want it to be black and white. We want it to be yin and yang. I'm sorry, it's not. Most of life is in this gray area, and there are rights and wrongs mixed together. So what we have to do is we have to start going, okay, this is theirs, this was the situation. Then, and only then, can we narrow down and get to what is black and white. What was black and white in my mistake was I missed a cue, and I shouldn't have missed a cue. Extenuating circumstances aside, I should be prepared for this. What is going on? Welcome back to the Drum Show podcast. I am Stephen Taylor, your host, and we are going to be talking about an email that I received recently, a question from a listener, a student. It depends. Sometimes they're in my online drum school. Sometimes they just watch on YouTube. Sometimes they just listen on the podcast. Sometimes they just have seen me on Facebook, whatever that is. But I still answer all of my own email and my questions. And so I wanted to read this question because it's really, really good. And it's a question I've gotten several times. And it's something I had to learn myself. And so I'm going to just read it to you as I've done before. And then let's dive into the topic. So this is from Ian. He said, "You gave me some great advice the other day, and I need your help again. I hope it's okay to ask. It's always okay to ask. Help@stevensdrumshed.com. Please message me, email me. I will answer. As you may remember, I'm a pro drummer of 35 years. All is going well in terms of work. However, I've had a crisis of confidence from out of the blue. I'm working through it, but had a gig yesterday that I need your advice on. I was asked to do a DEP gig, which is a sub gig, I believe is from Australia, by a guy who for a while has been a good contact and kind of a friend, but recently I've started to see his true colors. He highly rates himself as a guitarist. He's not bad, but not brilliant. He plays in several bands with his wife and also has a very inflated opinion of her singing ability. However, I keep all this to myself and remain very professional. Good idea. I did this gig for them being given 2 weeks notice and a set list of 30 songs. I am right in the middle of learning charts for professional pantomime with a very top grade production company who I felt very lucky to have been asked to do it. So I did as much work as I could on the songs. We played the gig, and truthfully, I would say I did a decent job. However, they were expecting perfect tempos that they are normally used to, a carbon copy of their usual drummer, and for me to know every exact tiny nuance of each song. I've depped for many years or subbed, I think you call it subbing, and built a good reputation, and this band and guitarist should know full well you will never get a carbon copy of their own drummer. It's just a fact when you play as a sub. They've plenty of experience to know this. I kept a firm, steady groove with each number, no frills, just keeping tight. However, throughout the gig, I could see the smarmy face, smarmy, I love that word, smarmy face of him if a tiny nuance was missed, etc. To top it all, they screwed around with the set list, which I had carefully worked on in terms of order. They played shortened versions of songs without telling me, didn't set up crucial fill cues for me that I was expecting. All of this made me play with very little emotion, and it's the first time I have gotten no enjoyment from a gig ever in my life. I fluffed up a little here and there, and so did they. That's how it goes. We're human. I left pronto afterwards. I texted the next day to say I wasn't being antisocial, just wasn't happy with some of my playing. I have a high personal standard, and I felt I didn't reach it. His answer was simply, okay. He knows I did a decent job, and it's just being unpleasant. This stems from me asking his wife not to complain to me about tempos when it was her husband who counted in the song. This happens a lot. I've been in a lot of these situations. And it's real bad when it's a husband-wife duo team. It can get kind of hairy because you have that whole marriage thing that you're just like, you guys want to sort this out off? Or no, we're going to do it on stage? Okay, cool. Well, let's go ahead. What this has done is kick off my crash of confidence again, and I've got a big show coming up. Can you advise me how you would cope with this? Any nuggets of advice, because I don't want to fester in my mind. Yes, there is some personal disagreement, but his approach to what was a pretty good job I did stinks, and now makes me think I'm not good at my job. I'm so worried I'm not going to be able to let this ghost write it. Hold on. Some of this, sometimes we have typos. I'm so worried I'm not going to be able to let this go, and it's going to impact the show that and future work. Sorry, this is obviously a bunch of autocorrect, ghost-righted. Some of this is autocorrect that didn't make sense. So he's worried he's not going to be able to let it go. Please help. Look forward to hearing from you. Best regards, Ian. So this is a great email, and this is one I've gotten multiple times. And as a drummer, especially as a professional drummer, there are so many things we have to learn to work through, and most of it is up here. Because in this email, we can dig for hours, and there's days of work of what was the issue, right? So what really was the issue at any given moment? Did you really make a mistake? Okay, if you did, Was that mistake 100% your fault? Own what was yours. Always own what was yours. But most mistakes are not 100% our fault. They could be a miscue from someone. They could be, many mistakes have come on my end from things being changed between sound check and a live show and me not being informed that things have been changed. I've had guitar players completely change their rig and their setup, and that changes everything in my ears whenever we've spent an hour or two setting up and sound checking. And so in that instance, did I make a mistake? Yes. Was the mistake 100% my fault? No. Should I own the parts of it that were my fault? Absolutely. Should I own the parts that weren't my fault? No. Should I be aware of them? Yes. Should I get angry at the other person? Probably not. Should I go speak to them? Maybe. Don't know. It depends. It really does depend. So you see how many elements it is to I missed a cue at the beginning of a song. There's a bunch of hits and I missed a cue. Okay? That was a mistake on me. Why did I miss the cue? I could not hear the guitars. Why could I not hear the guitars? I could at sound check. Part of the difference is we all of a sudden had a couple thousand people in the building, and at sound check we didn't. Okay, that could be part of it. But then later I talked to my guitar player and they're like, that might have been partly me because I completely messed with my rig in between and it messed with a lot of the levels. Okay. Now we're probably to the issue of why things were changed in my ears and I couldn't hear at the beginning of the show, because this happened at the beginning of the show. This actually happened at the beginning of a show. And so within the first 2 or 3 hits, I'm sitting there going, wait a second, what's going on? I can't hear. Like I'm looking at the sound guy. I'm looking at I'm looking at front of house. I'm looking at my monitor guy. I'm like, what is going on? Is this a trick? Is this a skills test? Am I, and by the second song that would have been sorted out. But first song, yeah, if we've completely changed that and I can't hear things, a lot of times, if I know, I'll pop my ear out. Or if the guitar player is like, hey, just so you know, I changed some things and your levels may be different. I may go ahead and tell my monitor guy, hey, I need you to boost him just a little bit from where he was, and I'll tell you if it needs to come down, because the thing I don't want, I'd rather him be just a little too loud than too soft and I can't hear it and he's my cue, right? So in that situation, there's a bunch of, should I speak to them? I don't know. Is it the band leader? Because sometimes they're going to do what they want to do. And you could speak to them all day long. They're still going to do it. Sometimes it's a simple conversation of like, oh, I totally get that, man. I knew you were having some problems in sound check. Next time, if you wouldn't mind, just so we avoid me missing any cues, would you please give me a heads up? Could you please tell me that you changed that? So that's an instance of a mistake is not just a mistake. We go through life. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. This podcast is brought to you by the Drum Better Daily program. That's actually my online drum school that I've run now for 12 plus years. Not only have I been playing the drums professionally since the age of 15, I've been teaching since the age of 18. Matter of fact, I talked to one of my first student a few days ago. I actually called him to see if he could sub a gig out for me. Daniel, love you, man. And he's still playing. He's still doing it on a pro level. I would love to have you go check it out at stevensdrumshed.com. You can find a link to that in the show notes or video description, whichever platform you're watching it on. But it truly is a community of like-minded drummers where we are striving to just be the best that we can be at the drums. In addition to over 70 pre-recorded drum courses, there's also a tech talk area where we talk about everything technology related as it pertains to the drums, e-kits, recording, doing videos, all of that stuff. There are forums where you can hang out with the other students as well. We do 2 live video student calls every week that you can join if you'd like to. We do guest artist calls monthly, and I'll even make you a personalized lesson plan if that's what you need. Yes, we talk about the nuts and bolts of drumming. Yes, I give you exercises, but we also talk a lot about how to practice more efficiently, how to practice better, and how to get more out of your practice time. I know you're just like me. You're busy, you're being pulled by work, by family, by friends, by other responsibilities. Whenever you practice, you really want to see gains and have it be productive. That is what we focus on in the Drum Better Daily program. I'll have to say personally, it's been really cool because some of these students I've worked with for over 12 years, we started running drum camps last year in 2022, and I got to meet some of them in person for the first time. Those drum camps have been selling out. They've been just blowing my mind with how much fun they are and how great a time it is to bring the community together in person. A community that was started online and has been going online strong now for over 12 years. I'd love to have you be a part of it. We go through life and we want it to be black and white. We want it to be yin and yang. I'm sorry, it's not. Most of life is in this gray area. And there are rights and wrongs mixed together. There are our fault and extenuating circumstances and other people, and they're all mixed in. And that's not black or white. So what we have to do is we have to start going, okay, this is theirs. This was the situation. And then, and only then, can we narrow down and get to what is black and white. Okay, what was black and white in my mistake was I missed a cue, and I shouldn't have missed a cue. Extenuating circumstances aside, I should be prepared for this. Sometimes you can't be, but that's what I want to be looking at. That's what and this goes with other things in life, and this isn't drumming, but forgiveness. When you got to forgive someone of something, you have to look at what was that mistake that they did, and you have to look at the extenuating circumstances, and you have to look at other people's influences, and maybe there's addictions involved and things like that. And then you get down to, as C.S. Lewis would put it, this tiny microscopic grain, and that's usually where you've got to forgive. It's usually not this big thing. It's usually one thing, and a lot of times it's, yeah, but despite all that, you made that choice. And then that's what you have to forgive. And it's the same with whenever we are playing on a gig. This doesn't have to do with forgiveness, but we can leave a gig and we can jade the whole gig as that was awful. I had a gig at the machine shop in Flint, Michigan. The mistake I was just talking about happened there. So did several others within the set. Some you could hear, some you could not hear. And the band heard a couple of them. I had 4 students there. They said they didn't hear any of them except the missed hit at the beginning, but it was just really me not hitting. I just didn't hit. I was like, I don't know where they are. And so that's better than me, them hitting and me hitting a half a beat later, right? And that was my decision in the moment. I was like, I'm not going to hit this because I don't actually, we're in a swamp here. I don't know where we are. But it was after that gig, what had happened was I made mistakes, and I kept getting in my head about it. And by the end of the gig, I had made a couple of other mistakes that I normally don't make. And afterwards, I actually I was like, hey, I'm really sorry about that. And when you listen to the recording, it's not like mistakes every song. There's a couple of like, was that that's where the mistakes are for me, but I jade that as a bad gig, right? But I immediately went to the band and was like, look, this was not my best night. This was not and then we started dishing through the extenuating circumstances, things that happened, and then it was like, okay, so some of this was my fault. Some of it wasn't. They didn't mean to do this. He didn't mean to do that. He didn't mean to do that. There were a lot of people in that, and. So we have to learn to sort through these different things and deal with our emotions that are happening. Because I want my playing to be very passionate, but I want my assessment of my playing. I want my playing to be very passionate and emotional. I want my assessment of my playing to be very unemotional. I want it to be very fact-driven, as if I'm dissecting a crime scene. You're just looking, what is there? What's there? Who did that? If you watch someone at a crime scene, they're not getting offended. I can't believe they stabbed them right there. They're like, okay, there's a knife right there and there's blood. There's a body over here. The stabbing happened here. It's factual, and they're writing it down because they have to dissect what happened so that they can find where the blame is, right? So they have to retrace steps, and they have to list facts. So I'm going to go through some of the things that I told him because I think they're good talking points. So the first thing I told him, I said, make a list of the mistakes that were made. These need to be actual mistakes. Mistakes that others made that caused you to make an error don't count. So we're making a list of our mistakes. I made this mistake, not their mistake that caused me to. It's not a secondary mistake. This is a primary mistake. I don't know where it came from. Okay? Then there's a secondary mistake. The guitarist went to, I'm picking on guitars. The bass player went to the bridge early, right? Okay, that caused me to go to the bridge. That's a secondary mistake. A primary mistake would be I went to the bridge early and I don't know why. That's a primary mistake. We may find out later it was a secondary mistake, but right up front, we have to know that was a primary mistake. That was me. I got to own that. What happened though? Because we can backtrack and go, oh, okay. So her husband not counting off songs correctly, that's a him issue, not a you issue. These would be items like missed a hit on a second song or whatever. Be brutally honest and as unemotional about it as possible. This is where we get a sheet of paper out or a notes app or whatever if you like doing things digitally. I find that for this type of thing, I will actually get a sheet of paper out and just kind of almost journal on it. Make those bullet points, physically writing, get, something hot to drink or something, get in my safe space. And then I'm going to go through this and I'm going to sort through this and I'm going to be as unemotional as possible. When I remember them, I'm going to be like, ugh. There are some mistakes I still remember. I'm like, ugh, I get my feelings hurt, right? But they're not even mistakes all the time. They're things that happened. And sometimes, this is important to remember with band members on the stage. Sometimes as a player, we hear someone's mistake, and then we want to, intentionally or unintentionally, consciously or subconsciously, we want to leave them hanging. We want to leave them out in the cold because they made a mistake, and we want everybody to see that. We can't do that. If you see a teammate, because that's what they are on stage, make a mistake, my first thing is like, how can I cover for this? How can I cover for them? How can I make this not, if my lead singer makes a mistake, the last thing I want to do is highlight that mistake because I know what that feels like. The first thing I want to do is try to figure out what is happening and how can we get back on. That's why you will see me sometimes if a vocalist makes a mistake and they have not heard it, and they can't get themselves back on course. Maybe they've reversed the beat. You will hear me and see me look at the bass player, and I will flip the beat. Why did I do that? Because otherwise it's a soup sandwich. We've messed the whole thing up. The ship's going down. We have to save it, right? Piano player that first taught me how to, I was messaging with him earlier. He's a second father to me. Taught me how to do this. He said, playing music is like you're flying a plane, and all of a sudden you're in the trees. And he said, you have to pull up as quick as possible. There's no other alternative. Otherwise, the whole thing crashes. He said, so how do you get out of the trees quick enough? And that sometimes means you're yelling at a bass player, you're yelling at a guitar, hey, we have to move. We got to go to the bridge. He's there and he doesn't know it. He can't hear, whatever that may be. Lead singer a couple months ago took his ears out, and I was unaware that he had both ears out, and all of a sudden he was completely off. And my first thought was, what is this guy doing? And then my second, I'm looking over at the monitor guy, and I'm like, because we started to drift. And the bass player turned around and he's like, I don't know how to fix this. And I'm sitting there going, okay, the only way I can fix this is to stay steady, and hopefully he jumps back on. And he did. Like it wasn't one of those situations because it wasn't solid enough that I could feel I could make that jump to the next building. We were in a swampy area, and my monitor guy, tour manager, came over and he said, yeah, he had taken out of his ears. He's having a problem with his ears. He took them out. And I was like, okay, this makes complete sense because he stopped hearing the click, and it was a part that I stopped playing in. So in that moment, I was just doing everything I could to cover for everyone. It wasn't the neatest cover, and feelings may have been hurt, but it was the only solution I could find at that time, right? But I never want to leave a band member hanging to augment their mistake. Because that's a hard thing. So the first thing we have to do is we have to go through and list, hey, where were my actual mistakes? You have a bad practice session. Where were the mistakes I actually made? You have a bad rehearsal. What mistakes did I actually make? Take ownership of those. And we start with those. These are the mistakes that I know were mine. Why? And then we start going through, well, this happened right before, this happened. So we can look at all the extenuating circumstances, and all of that comes into play. I'm a sub. I didn't have that long. They counted it off at the wrong tempo. All these are extenuating circumstances, but then we come down to you made the mistake. Why? Figure it out. And a lot of times, if it's later in the gig, I made the mistake because I was mad that I'd made a mistake earlier and I couldn't get over it. And it caused me to make another mistake. These are moments in time. That's all they are. And if we hang on that moment in time, because music moves, time doesn't stop just because you made a mistake. It's moving on. By the time you're still thinking about your mistake 3 bars later, the band is in the chorus. You have to leave the mistake. Unemotionally, don't be attached to it. Ouch, move on, right? Take the hit and move on. Because if we sit there and imagine a boxer thinking about how bad that hit in the first round hurt when he took it to the side of the head, and they're in the 5th round. Imagine that. He's focused on that first hit from the, oh, that's why I'm feeling so bad. He's going to lose. Why? He's focused on the past. The only thing you can affect and do something about in the moment is the moment. We can't do something about the past. We can affect our future in that moment. So when we're playing music, it is an event that happened. Don't label it a mistake. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was an accident. That's different than a mistake. Okay? You have to leave it. We can't label everything as bad. It's an event that happened. Let it move by. We'll assess the damage later, right? So that's the first thing we have to do is look at what mistakes were ours. Then go through each mistake and figure out what went wrong. If it had to do with being a sub, note that. But make notes on what you might be able to do in the future that will help you avoid that mistake again. If it was a playing error, make a note to fix it in your practice time. If it was a song error due to not knowing the songs well enough, make a note of that. If it was an error due to them changing the set list or song arrangement, note that as well. So the thing that we're looking for is action items at this point. We are looking for things that we can take action on. You say, well, that was a one-off thing. The guitarist, I don't know. So my action item might be, okay, so he changed that in between sound check and the show. My solution is not a confrontation. I just want to go and say, hey, at the beginning of the show last night, I missed that third hit. And I know that's annoying. I think I missed it because my mix changed. That probably had to do with people being in the building, and I think it had some to do with you adjusting your settings. So if you wouldn't mind next time, just so I can make sure that we sound the best, if you make some adjustments after sound check, if you wouldn't mind just giving me a heads up, and then I'll have the monitor guy boost you a little bit in my ears, and that way at least you're too loud and I can have him turn you down, but I'll hear you. And so you see what happened there? It's non-confrontational. We want to avoid this. You did this, and that caused me to do this, and it was your fault. That's not what no. It's not going to accomplish anything. Do you understand that? It's not going to accomplish anything except I'm right, and you're stomping around like a 3-year-old, because please stop. It causes nothing but problems. Do I get this right all the time? No. But I try. So you have to have that conversation to maybe fix the future things. Another fix in that situation. I go to my monitor guy and say, hey, please watch me the first 3 or 4 measures of the show. If you see me waving, I'm going to be telling you this or this. And that is for whichever instrument or whatever, because I can't hear something. Or I may be pointing to that person and I said, I need you to make the adjustment immediately. And so I've got some fail safes here that I'm able to, and then if it happens again and I miss it, I don't know. Like I can't do everything and account for everyone's changes, but I can try. I can try to prepare for it. You have a gear malfunction. How do I keep that from happening again? That's why I've wound up with multiple hi-hat. This is my multiple hi-hat clutches, bags of felts, Sharpies, tape. I used to carry 9-volt batteries. I used to carry. I still do carry a couple extra cables. I would carry an extra cable for my in-ears. I would carry 3 sets of in-ears, 2 molded and 1 non-molded universal. I would carry multiples, 2 snares on stage at all time, two bass drum pedals. Why? Because the mistakes have been made in the past, and it's not going to happen again. Get me the first time, shame on you. Give me the second time, shame on me, because I didn't come prepared, right? That's why you always see me, going with backup heads, backup snare, backups for my backups. I've had in-ears go out, and I've had my second pair of in-ears go out. So if I had a third pair, which at this point in my career I do, it's not my best pair. Who cares? Gets the job done. That's what I'm looking for. It may even be like I have a pair of Vic Firth cans that I can throw on that look crazy, but I'll, go and Darren King Mute Master, I'll tape them if I need to, right? If that means I get the show done, who cares, right? So that's kind of the things that we're looking for. These are the action items we're looking for. It may be something playing-wise that you can do in your practice time that will allow you to fix that. But you have to understand this has to be an unemotional thing. We're observing a crime scene. That's all we're doing. We're taking notes. And from those notes, we help solve the crime. What happened here? And then instead of being angry, even when cops go arrest someone, they're probably not angry about it. They're like, nope, that was the crime. They did it. Let's go get them. It's very factual. Now they may be unhappy about the event that happened, but they had tried to put that aside because they're like, no, this is the reason you've got to be arrested. You can't kill people. Sorry, and you're arrested, right? So it's the same with our playing. We really have to avoid placing blame. When I go to speak to a band member, I avoid blame placing phrases. So I always am putting myself in that situation first. So I missed that hit. I think it was because this happened and this happened. And whenever I think you said you had changed some settings, and I believe that caused my in-ear mix to be different. And because I couldn't hear your guitar, I missed the hit. There's a lot of I, and there's not a lot. You changed your settings. You caused me to miss. No. I did this. I did that. I'm going to take ownership as much as I can, and I'm going to let them see I'm not placing the blame on you. Next time, I just need a heads up, because then I can fix it, and we don't look bad. Okay, so another note I've got here, go through that list and see how many issues were actually you. It won't be many. Deal with those in your practice time to be better for it next time. And now we need to deal with the issue of you beating yourself up. You noted all of the mistakes, noted what they were from, made action items to address them. The rest is going to be hurt feelings, actual insults that you inferred on the situation. For instance, this is a big one, inferring voice inflection or meaning to a text message. This is huge. I don't like texting about problematic issues, argument areas. My wife and I made a rule, and anytime we have our worst, we won't call them fights, quarrels, anytime we have our worst disputes, it comes from us breaking this rule. We don't text about sensitive subjects. We text about scheduling, this, that. If I see it could go into the sensitive subject area, I will tell her, hey, can we talk about this whenever I get home from work? Hey, I want to talk about this, but I can't do it right now. Why? Because from experience, that's going to dovetail. She'll do the same with me. And what I want her to see is my eyes and see my face. I want to hear my voice inflection. We miss those things with text message, and this is a very good example of that. And so, for instance, a text response, okay, has no vocal inflection. We do not know what they meant by that text except acknowledging that you sent them a text. This has been a major area of work for me. Be honest when you are making a deal on something that isn't a deal, right? And we're dealing with all the other emotional baggage that came along with that gig. But we can't imply that, I have some friends that are very type A. I have some that are on the spectrum, and they don't have an emotional response. It's like, received it. That it's like talking to, AI or something. It's like, okay, got it. They're that, check it off. That's all they wanted, right? So I want to read the rest of my response and kind of talk around it. It was a bad gig. We all have them. The others on the gig were a little difficult to deal with. We don't know. Maybe he and his wife are having issues. Maybe when they play together, they project those issues onto the other players. There could have been a myriad of reasons. What you have to do is lean on past experience, past successes, and an honest evaluation of the situation to help you move forward. That's what pros do. Not every band leader is going to know how to communicate well. Most don't. I have a conductor that is calling today, and he communicates in a different way. He has a very different personality from some other people that I work with. These things make him very good at his job, but his delivery of things that need to be fixed is brutally direct. It took me years to learn this. Now I'm on his first call list, and I don't get offended in the least. I know how he works, but it took me a while. I mean, I used to go home and be like, oh my gosh, this guy hates me. He didn't. And afterwards he would come and joke with me. I'm like, this guy was just reaming me. He was just being so direct, getting things fixed how he knew. That's a conductor's job, right? As a pro, we have to become very good at assessing situations and keeping our emotions under control, reading people. This is an instance when they got out of hand for you and it's causing bigger issues. The way they interacted with you sounds unprofessional. We have to take the high road and be the pros we know we are. This is harder than practicing a new item with drumming. A pro knows how to walk in, read the room, and deliver what is needed. We all deal with these mental issues. Like I said, I've had to deal with these before. And once a person truly shows us who they are and how they operate, if we expect them to act outside of their character, that's on us. They're not going to. They're going to function how they have learned to function. That comes from a myriad of past experiences, hurts, not being taught how to communicate, etc. We have to look at all those things and read the room. You're a great player. Your career tells you that. This was a bad gig. Assess it, get action items together, and take those actions. The next gig will be better. There's a bigger discussion you need to have with yourself of whether you want to continue working with this band leader or not. I had to make some of those decisions in the past. So you have to know where you want to draw the line. And this really is it, I've had, Jeff Beccaro, I was reading a book on him, someone that interviewed him, and he talked about reading the room. He talked about being able to understand what certain producers wanted, what certain engineers wanted, what certain artists wanted, being able to read that, and that it's a critical skill. I talked about it with Kevin not too long ago. You can find him online, Big Right Foot. He plays with John Party, and we were talking about you have to understand how to read band leaders. You have to understand how to read their delivery and not get offended by that once you figure out how they function, because they're going to function how they function, and you've just got to figure out how to deal with that and how to work with that. So whenever we have a gig, we need to look at the mistakes that we made, own them, figure out what we can do. We need to figure out the extenuating circumstances. And we need to figure out where we're emotionally overreacting, right? We need to also figure out, are there discussions that need to happen? Do I need to go and speak to the band leader for, hey, and a lot of times you will find me speaking to a band leader a lot, especially on a new gig. I want as much information as I can get. Information is really king for me on a gig. And so whenever I'm on a gig and I feel there were some things in rehearsal that didn't go well, you will most always find me going up to the band leader or going up to the conductor or whoever's in charge and saying, hey, I got a couple things I want to talk to you about. And then we go through them. And by me asking a few questions, hey, whenever you said this, I didn't quite understand, but I didn't want to stop the rehearsal because I knew you were trying to get some things done. What did you mean when you said this? Because I think I read it incorrectly, but I want to get you what you were wanting. And then, oh, well, what I was talking about, good. So I had one conductor, this was back in college, the entire rehearsal was a gig I got paid for in Mobile, Alabama, Mobile Symphony I was playing with. And he said, he kept saying, give me a flourish there. And I'm like, what? And I'm looking at the paper and I'm like, flourish. He wants me to flourish there. What does that mean? I don't understand that word. What is, and it went on the whole, hey, you didn't give me a flourish there. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, flourish. You got it. I'll catch it next time. I'm like, I don't know what that means, What he meant was a crash. He wanted a crash there. Flourish. It still doesn't make any sense, but that's what he wanted, right? So it took me going up to him and say, hey, I don't actually understand what you mean when you say flourish. Oh, one of those, that thing on your left. Crash symbol? Yes, I wanted one of those. Okay. That's a crash symbol, but in the future when you say flourish, I'm going to give you a crash. Yes, that's what I mean. Excellent. I'm going to go get lunch, right? And I go get lunch and be like, okay, whatever. When I moved to Nashville, I had to understand they had a different term for halftime, cut time. They'd kind of reverse those. Halftime to them meant cut time. Cut time to me meant double time. Double time or cut time to them meant halftime. It was like, what? What are you saying to me? No, I said halftime. I'm like, I played halftime. They're like, no. Like, boom, chick, boom, chick. Oh, you wanted double time. Yeah, halftime. No, that's cut time. No, cut time is, I'm like, oh, geez. All right. So, you have to understand this terminology and how to deal with people. But these gigs happen. Rehearsals like this happen. Practice sessions like this happen. It is the thing. Whenever you start playing with other people, you have to learn to navigate. And if you can learn to navigate this, you can have a pretty great career. If you decide to get all emotional and get your feelings hurt at every rehearsal, at every drum practice, at every gig, you're going to have a miserable time. And those people don't work as much. They simply don't. And anytime I've gotten in my head about things and become negative, I don't work with that, it's just how that happens. So anyway, I thought this was a good question. I wanted to discuss it. If you ever need some help, please email help@stevensdrumshed.com. Your question may be included on the podcast. Or if you have a topic like, hey, could you talk about this? I'm happy to. As well, you can jump over to see my online drum school. I'd love to have you in that. We do live calls every week, couple of them. And then we've got camps. We still have a couple of spots left open for, I think, September and I forget. There's a couple in the level 2 and maybe 1 or 2 spots in the level 1. But we started with like 72 or 75 spots, and we're down to maybe 5 or 6 left for the whole year. So go over, snag those. Those are in the link below as well, video description or podcast description. And I'll talk to you on the next show.